Today is May 23rd. My son has been home from his mission for a week now. And I met with our stake president 2 days ago. And I just wanted to follow up with that meeting, what happened, and tell a little bit more about my son's experience. I shared a lot already on social media, and I appreciated the responses. For the most part, they were all very supportive and positive. There were a few people who clearly were still in that cult mindset and thought what I did was wrong, that you don't interfere with missions, and I will address that at the end. But first, I want to share the whole story because I haven't shared the entire thing. And I do want to share my experience with the stake president. So I think I'll start with my son's entire story. We knew he struggled with suicidal thoughts and self-harm before he left. Only a few months, though, before he left. We did not know the depth of his pain and depression. Of course, we knew about that. So when he got out into the MTC, which was in Peru, in the mission field, he let the mission president know. Well, he let the mission president of the MTC know that he was depressed, that he had suicidal thoughts, that he had self-harmed in the past, and that he asked for a counselor, and he was given one in the MTC. Then when he was sent out into the field, his mission president, my house is creaking. He told the mission president as well, and he assigned him a counselor as well. This counselor, in the 5 months that he was out there, never met my son face to face. They only talked over the phone. So his mission president knew right from the beginning. His counselor that he was assigned knew right from the beginning. And he wanted help to address those issues, the suicidal thoughts and the self-harm. And that was never given. My son, they only wanted to treat him for depression. And he didn't feel right about starting medication in the mission field. So he refused. He said no. But he wanted to talk. And pretty much that was just not an option. It was take the medication or, good luck. Good luck with things. And as a parent, that infuriates me. But that's just the way it was. So he made do as best he could. First companion was okay. Second companion was more challenging. And things started to come up, I would say, to the surface for him to deal with. And again, he reached out, did what he was supposed to do, talked to his counselor, and the answer was still medicate and deal with the depression. And the other stuff was just brushed under the rug. They did not want to deal with it. So April 1st, I sent an email to my son because I felt truly in my heart that things were about to get ugly for him. I had no idea. I thought it was still quite a ways away, like maybe 6 months away. It was only 6 weeks away that this hell was coming. By the end of April, he had had his first major trigger that he was unable to handle any other way than cutting. So he cut himself the end of April. And then he confessed to that violation of the rules. And the mission broke their own rules and allowed him to stay. Instead of sending him home immediately, getting him help like they were supposed to do, they kept him. That right there just infuriates me to no end, that they broke their own rule. My son drew blood. He clearly was not in a mental state where he should stay. And yet they would not let him go. At the same time, he requested to come home. He made it clear to everyone involved he wanted to come home to get help. And the answer was no. And then the push for medication became very intense on my son. He was sent to the temple. The temple is where you get personal revelation, and you're supposed to get answers from God. Personal revelation. And my son got that. He got confirmation to come home. And then he was told that he was wrong, that they knew better, and that he really basically just asked the wrong questions. Well, bullshit. There is no wrong question to ask when you go into the temple or to meditate or sincerely to connect with God. The fact that they were telling my son that he was wrong and totally invalidated his experience, his feelings, just, what the fuck? I mean, that is just insane. It is control. It is mind control. It is cult-like behavior. He went and did everything that he was supposed to do. And because he got a different answer than the one that they wanted, he was punished for it. And I saw him at that time. He reached out to us and said he wanted to come home, and told us he was depressed. He did not tell us about the suicidal thoughts or that he was harming himself at that time. The next week passed, and his story changed. The story that they had told him had changed. And by this point, my red flags were just flying. Like, no way. My son needed help. He needed to be home, and they were not allowing it. I told him to stand strong and to be firm, that he only wanted to come home. And they just wanted to push medication. So the next time I talked to him was Mother's Day. And it was clear to me something was very, very wrong with my son. And I know this about him. I know that he's hurt himself in the past. I know that he's had suicidal thoughts. What mother would not do everything in her power to help their child? Mission be damned. I mean, even if I was a true believing Mormon, who the hell cares about serving God at that point? I know the Mormon mindset, and it is, some parents truly believe it's a privilege if your child is taken while he's on a mission or she's on a mission. That death, if it comes while they're on a mission and they're serving, then they have a guaranteed ticket into heaven. They are admitted into the celestial kingdom, and it's a good thing. That is such bullshit. That is such fucking mind control and cult-like mentality, to think that if they die serving God, serving the Mormon God, then, they've made it. Like, it's a privilege. It's not a fucking privilege. It's just so messed up. And I wasn't willing. I was not willing to let that happen. So I reached out to my stake president, who, according to him, never received any of my messages, and okay, fine, say he truly didn't get any of my messages to call me. What kind of leader does not inform the parent about anything that is going on? He never once reached out to me the entire time my son was going through crisis, and especially, say, the last 5 days of his mission. He never once reached out to me. He reached out to my husband, though. And that pisses me the hell off, and I made that clear to him. That was one of the first things I said to him in our meeting, was that don't ever do that to a mother again. Don't ever leave a mother hanging when there's information about her child that you have that you could share. I mean, it was just so fucking wrong. And I did call him on it, and he did apologize for it. And I hope that he does make changes in the way that he goes forward in dealing with a situation like mine, where there's one parent who's out of the church. Because I was definitely ignored. I was definitely not kept in the loop. I had to fight my way in to get information. And that, again, should not happen. So I see my son the next day. We made contact online, kind of by accident, not on purpose, but we were able to speak. And that's when I had my list of yes or no questions, because it was not safe for him to speak freely. And I asked him if he was suicidal. He said yes. I asked him if he was cutting himself. He said yes. And I asked him if he still wanted to come home, and he said yes. And I'm like, okay, we're going to make that happen. We're going to make sure you do. And he showed me what he had done. He showed me some of what he had done. And again, what mother could look at their child and the harm that they had caused themselves and not want to help? I guess there are parents that would maybe turn their backs, but I can't imagine that. And so after our phone call, I made it clear he needed, the only way he could come home would be to confess again and to let them know that I knew, and that he was not alone. My son cut himself 5 more times after the first time. He never should have been kept in Peru after the first cut. After the first time he cut himself, he should have been sent home. That's the fucking rule. And they broke it. And that makes me so mad, because my son suffered for another 2 weeks with so much pain and anguish, and wanted to leave, and he couldn't. Now people say, okay, mission's voluntary. Yes, he could have left. He could have just walked up and left. Again, bullshit. It's a fucking cult. And you don't just get up and leave a fucking cult, especially if you are not mentally stable. You know, it takes a lot of fucking power to get out of a cult. It takes a lot of power to just walk out of a mission. Kids don't do that. These are 18 and 19-year-old kids that we're talking about. You know, and they're so brainwashed to listen to their leaders and to obey. Obedience is everything. You obey. You don't think for yourself. And they have their passports, and they control their money. It's not so easy to just get up and walk away. Yes, there are those that do. Thank God for those few. And that's great, and I wish more kids would. But there is such mind control in the mission field that you just, I don't know how they could fight it and get away. And if you have a parent that's saying, stay, listen to your leaders, do what you're told, well, that's so going to fuck you up. I mean, thank God my son knew he could come home. He knew we would support him. He knew I would do anything in my power to get him home. And I think that helped save him. So we get him home. They release him honorably, and there is no other way than they should have. If they would have called him to repentance or said that he did not serve honorably, the state president would have got an earful right that second. Like, it would not have been pretty. But they dismissed him honorably. And he was a free man after that. And I made my appointment to go see the state president, and I did that on Tuesday. And I really, really did appreciate the support from everyone. I was definitely empowered when I went into that office and met with him. There was no, I was not going to accept his bullshit. He definitely tried to lie about things, and I called him on every single one that I knew about. And he cried. And that was part of my intention, was that he would feel how deeply hurt my family was by the way my son was treated. You can't break those rules that are in place to keep our children safe. And they're not safe. The stories that my son has told me from his mission, oh my God, fucking nightmare. And there's still hundreds of kids in those conditions. 2 boys died during the time frame that my son was on his mission because of unsafe conditions. And until parents get furious and stop sending their kids, it's not going to change. It's all about the dollars. It's all about the money that these children are bringing into the church through tithing, through these new converts. They're tithing. They just want their money. They don't give a shit about the slaves that are doing the groundwork, our kids. They don't care. Because if they did, they sure as hell wouldn't have said the shit that they did to my son. He was told that he truly didn't want to serve, because if he truly did, then he wouldn't be going through this. That's bullshit. He was told, of course, his feelings weren't valid. He was told that his experience in the temple wasn't valid. That pisses me so much. Just because they are above. That's the problem. They are have this authority, this mantle of authority. And that was one of the first things I said to my stake president, was that he had no authority over me. I do not recognize any authority of his. And that I hoped he would listen to me as a parent, from one parent to another, and forget the fact that he thinks he's closer to God than I am. Because clearly, in the case of my son, he was not. He was not closer to God. If he had the spirit of discernment, he would have sent my son home at the beginning. He never would have allowed him to stay for 2 more weeks and endure and suffer. But, Mormons think enduring and suffering are good. They're only good until you recognize they're not necessary. You don't have to suffer to learn lessons. But some people do, until they realize that they don't. And you can't change their minds about that. So I wrote a book called Sacred Light, My Journey from Mormon to Mystic. It came out 3 years ago in August. And I brought it with me. I showed it to the stake president. Told him, I am an apostate through and through. Like, I get that me coming here and calling you on your bullshit. And I didn't swear with him because I didn't want him to get caught up in the words. But I'm swearing now because that's exactly how I feel. It was total bullshit. He was trying to feed me, and that he fed my son. He just played along. My son was a number, and they wanted to keep that number in the mission field as long as possible. And so anyways, I said, I realize after saying all of this to you that you very well could excommunicate me And you've got my permission. I do not care if you do. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want to be excommunicated? And I kind of laughed, like, who the hell wants to be excommunicated? I said, no, I want to be left alone after this. I want to put this in my rearview mirror and never have to look back at the horror of this experience. But I said, if you do excommunicate me, I will not go out silently. I will share all of it publicly, and I will speak. And I also made it clear that if anyone asks me about my son's mission, I will tell the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this shit that's happened to us. Our children are not safe when they are sent out into the mission field. Their interests are not put first. You know, their safety is not put first. And I will speak the truth. So I don't think this stake president is going to come after me, but I do wonder if I won't be flagged, and a future stake president might. But I don't care. That is meaningless to me. It's a made-up religion. It's a cult. And those who are highly invested in this process continuing will tell you differently. But those who know, those of us who have escaped, it's a cult. And it's all about mind control. I mean, they control your fucking underwear. They tell you what kind of underwear you can eat, what you can wear, what you can eat, what you can drink. It's a cult. And nothing made that more clear to me than my son's mission. So I'm saying this because I hope another mother, parent will be helped by our story. That's it. Think twice. These men don't have any power of discernment. They don't have this extra special power. You are just as powerful as them. And if something's not right, if you feel like there is something major wrong, you're probably right. And yes, it's great that we get to talk to our children once a week, but it's still not enough. They should be able to reach out whenever they need to speak to a parent or a sibling or a friend. Things need to change. And if I can help bring about that change, even just a little bit, I want to do it. I'm willing to speak out. I'm grateful that I sat down with my stake president, and I'm grateful that I held my ground and told him exactly how I felt, even if there are consequences that will come. It was worth it. I will always fight for my children, their mental health, their life, their happiness. I don't see that as coddling. I see it as courageous. And parents who feel differently, I feel sorry for your kids. That's okay. At least mine know that they have a mother and a father that will support them come hell or high water, no matter what. And now we're getting our son the help that he needs, and that's all that matters. He's grateful he went on a mission. He's grateful for every bit of it. He still believes in this church. And honestly, I'm grateful for it too. I wouldn't want it to be repeated. I wouldn't want the lies, and I would not want the disrespect that my son was shown. But we are better for having gone through it. He's better. I'm better. You know, going forward, lessons have been learned. And if anyone can learn from what we've been through and their story is different, that's a good thing. Their outcome. Maybe it'll keep a missionary from going, or maybe it'll make a mom help her, give her courage to fight. Because, yeah, we had to fight for him to come home. We had to call their bullshit. And it's scary as hell when you're up against something that feels so huge. I wasn't listened to. My son wasn't listened to. In the beginning, we both had to fight to be heard. And then once we were together, there was no stopping. There was no stopping him. So I do appreciate that my stake president listened, and I hope that he truly does make a change and that it's not just words. But I do believe that he understands he made a huge mistake with how he dealt with my son, and that serious consequences could have happened if they had gone down the path that they wanted, and if they continued to ignore my son's request for help and to go home. I pray that no mother has to go through this. But I'm grateful it ended the way it did for us. And I'm sorry for those missionaries that don't come home. I'm sorry for the ones that don't make it out alive for whatever the reason. Unsafe conditions, harming themselves, accidents, whatever. That's a life cut too short. And it shouldn't happen. So there you have it. Our story in a nutshell. And it ended good. Thank God. But it still makes me mad as hell when I think about how my son was invalidated for knowing what he needed to do, where he needed to be. That is just such bullshit. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'll probably post a link to my book because it has a lot in there about the church and the cult-like behaviors, and maybe somebody would, maybe it'll help somebody else escape. It's my story of getting out. So I'll probably put a link to my book, maybe a link to my website. I'll think about that one. I'm not sure. But I pray that it helps somebody else. Namaste.